hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Chen. I'm the president of the Asian American Foundation. It's really an honor for me to be here with you today at this incredible screening of this powerful film. First of all, I want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank Gina and Titi, PBS, the whole team for, again, creating this powerful movie. I want to thank you all also for participating and experiencing the feelings we felt back in March of 2021, right? The shock of these terrible and senseless murders, the anger we felt at the way they were handled by law enforcement, the insensitivity, the ignorance of law enforcement at the time, and also then the grief of the families, which was so palpable in this movie. That's what really got to me when I saw this. I want to thank also you, Gina, for reminding us how we felt since that terrible moment, and even before, the need to come back, give back, and do something for our community. So in the past year and a half, some of my old friends, we decided we had spent our whole lives trying to assimilate here in America and help other people and try to fit in. Now it's time to help our own community. So we came together and formed, thank you. Came together just to form a small nonprofit organization called Launch. And one of the things we did, which was quite novel, was to look at American attitudes towards Asian Americans. That study, that research hadn't really been done comprehensively for over 20 years. Because we know it's not Asians attacking Asians. So what is it about our community that has caused these attacks to occur by non-Asians? And so we did 2 years of research with 8,000 people around the country, 100,000 data points, and I'll just share 3 key statistics with you. Number 1, 58%. That's the percentage of people, of Americans in our country, across the country, of all races, who when asked, can you name a prominent Asian American, said, you know, I really can't. 58%. Second statistic, 22%. This is the percentage of Americans who when asked, do you think Asian Americans are at least partly responsible for COVID? 1 in 5 Americans said yes. Incredibly. And the last one is 33%. We asked people in America, do you think Asian Americans are more loyal to Asia or to America? 1/3 of Americans thought Asian Americans were more loyal to Asia. So you hear these recurring themes, and it's mentioned in the movie as well. Invisibility, perpetual foreigner, model minority myth, yellow peril, and threat. They're perpetrated in these heinous crimes. They're perpetrated in daily microaggressions and harassments that have been happening, for, frankly, hundreds of years. Another group of friends, much more influential than my friends, created a group called the Asian American Foundation, of which I'm the CEO today. These people came together, many of them were entrepreneurs, successful business people, again, to give back to the community and to find ways to support our community, work together to address hate, to build belonging, and build prosperity. And in those areas right now, working both in short-term and medium-term and long-term opportunities. In the short term, we're working with local community leaders around the country to address hate, providing resources, connecting them on a national scale. So people in the Bay Area, in Oakland, for example, can collaborate with people in Chicago and in New York to say, if this works here in our community, perhaps you can use it for your community as well. We're trying to address many facets of hate, the awareness of anti-API hate, the response to victims, and also the prevention. Longer term, we're working in education, also working in the areas of narrative change. Today's movie is a great example of how powerful storytelling is to change people's perceptions and attitudes towards our community. I'm delighted to invite to the stage Aarti Shahani, who is a NPR journalist, best-selling author, and also the leader of the blog, The Art of Power, podcast, Art of Power, thank you. And then Monthanus Ratanapakdee, whom you saw in the movie today, whose father was tragically murdered in January of 2021, but who today was commemorated with a street renaming to Vicha Ratanapakdee Way. Welcome.
come for the film screening. What were you doing earlier today?
Yeah, we have a William Street for my father, Vicha Ratanapakdee way today. Yeah, at the Thank you for everyone to coming out today and supporting our family, yes, and the AAPI community, yes.
And is this the first Thai American to have a street named after the Thai community?
Since pandemic, yes, 2019, yes.
I'm sorry it's in this context, but I'm very happy that we've done that. So now whenever I walk by Aflock, I'll be reminded of his father.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Monthanus, I wanted to start by asking you just a little bit about why your family came to America.
Yes, my father came to care for my family, and then he come and help my family, and then raise my son, my young son, yeah, 9 years old and 12 years old, yes.
He was the caretaker.
Yeah, he loved me and my young son, that's why he come to take care of us, yeah.
What are some of the happy memories you have with your father, Richard?
Yes, we are Asian American, we are
I know
close.
that.
Yeah, we are close family, I don't want to say like a baby taker, he want to come to take care of my family, and he loved to go to park and museum with us, And I remember my memory, I miss him every day. My father always teaching me and my younger sister, about the love and the passion, about the respect and kindness. Until he raising my son, about love, kindness, and respect to people, yes.
Explain a little bit more. How did he teach you about love? What does that mean?
Love, like you have to love your sister. Don't fight. Yeah, when we start screaming and fighting, he said, no, you have to love each other, this is your sister. And then positive thing all the time. Yes, when they starting to say something like negative, he said, do not. I never hear anything my father yelling or something. He never say something negative for my father. Grandpa always smiling, kind. Even my husband, he's American. He's always like, oh, every time I open the door, I always say, Grandpa, like, smiling. Yeah, opposite from my mother. She's like, yeah.
She's the fire.
She's a fire. He's stronger, yes.
Okay. And so he had a very gentle nature, it sounds like.
Yes, gentle nature. But he's a family man. He's the only one working. My mom is a housewife. She never worked. Yes, he's the only family man.
Just reading about your father and your family, it reminds me of my own. My mom having a bit more fire, and my father who's passed as well, being quite calm. And it struck me that before he passed, you spent a great deal of time becoming his caretaker. He had had multiple medical procedures. And I read this one detail that it really, frankly, I related to it because I did it with my father. When he was recovering at home, you slept on the floor beside his bed to make sure he was okay.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I just have to checking on him, like how is everything okay? Like, because he just get back from the hospital. And at that time, about the pandemic, we have to make sure like and he's okay, like he get a fever, he get everything, and then he get back to normal, like stronger. We have some nurse to the house to do the therapist for him, but he back to normal after the 6 months, and he can walk out to the exercise for 2 months by himself without cane.
You're talking about his recovery and how strong he was, and really what I was thinking about, the spirit of my bringing it up, is just thinking what a good daughter you are.
I'm the oldest, yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's why everything is, I think it's my father raising me as a leader, or maybe, yes, but I'm not, we raised from I'm the oldest, and I have my younger sister, and I feel like my younger sister have been a spoiler
I was the youngest and I did that for my dad.
Yes, that's why. But yeah, we love each other, you know, like that's why Grandpa said, you have to love each other. Yes, yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yes.
I'm happy we're able to be there. I want to ask you a little bit about the case that is still going on. It's an active case. The alleged murderer is a man named Antoine Roxie. He's going to trial. According to his defense lawyers, he has mental health problems. And I guess I wanted to know what you think of that. What do you make of this man who harmed your father in this way?
Mental problem or temper tantrum or the bad day for me. At the first day when I see the video, it's painful. I very feel painful a lot. And every time when I see the video, I put my hand over the video. I don't want to see it. And then I have to hiding for my family and my son. My mother doesn't want to see at all. And it's painful to me. I don't think it's a temper tantrum or mental problem. I think he intended to kill my father. And after I sit down for 2 days at the preliminary hearing, and then for the testimony and listen for the 3 witnesses. Before he killed my father, he yelling about, "What the heck are you? Look at me. What the fuck are you? Look at me." Before he running across street to push my father. I think he intended to kill my father. And I think everyone here today watching this movie today, you can see when he turned around and he celebrated, I think he not mental problem.
And were you able to communicate that to prosecutors in San Francisco? Do you feel that you were able to express what you thought?
No, I can't because it's the United States. We cannot testify, and my daughter cannot testify on the preliminary hearing. And then after I listened to 3 witnesses, the suspect walked back to my father more than 1 year, and then they see my father. My father is still alive when he on the floor. Yeah. His eye open. You know, even called the ambulance to help him.
Your father, Vicha, has inspired a national movement, specifically among Asian Americans. Why this theater has the people that are here on Saturday afternoon. Why documentary filmmakers during the pandemic figured out how to record and document and do whatnot. What do you think your father, if he were with us physically today, what would he make of that movement? What would he have to say to this movement?
I think his dance is awakened about the Asian anti-violence, stop Asian hate. If he's still alive, he wants everyone to live with love without hate, you know. Love can be stop hate. I think my father wants everyone to stay with love. He doesn't want everyone to be a violence and hate each other. Yes.
And finally, can you just tell us when you remember him, what's a memory that often comes to mind that you hold close to sort of keep him alive in your head?
He's always talking to me every day and then advising me every day. Yeah, I miss him every day. He should stay long life with me. Yeah, but now he's a grandpa for everyone. Grandpa for Asian American. And then Asian Americans are American. You know, I think his memory is a symbol life for our Asian American. Asian American needs a protection and equal rights too.
filmmakers and advocates who are working on building Asian American power in this country. I'll introduce, I guess going in the direction that you're seated first, Titi, you who directed the film Stop Asian Hate. Thank you so much for joining us today and for doing this work during the pandemic. Don Jung, who is the Director of Programs at the Center for Asian American Media. Many questions for you, Don. My dear friend, Gina Kim. Gina Kim executive produced this, and she made this while also being executive producer for Christiane Amanpour's show on CNN and PBS. So she is one of the hardest working women I know in media, and I need to let everyone know that about my friend. And then finally, Charles Jung, who is a lawyer and leading Asian American activist. And I believe his daughter is in the audience. Do something with it. So I want to start now actually with Titi. I am also a journalist, a writer, a storyteller. I am fascinated by people who managed to create anything during the pandemic. And film, let alone. Can you talk a little bit about how this got made? Like, give me the backstory.
Is this on?
People in the back, is that on?
I think so.
No.
I think so. I thought it was.
Can I
Yeah.
Yay! So I guess the origin story for this film is in the summer of 2021, Gina approached me to do a documentary about the rise in anti-Asian hate that we were all experiencing at the time. So, and I, at the time, I think many of you in this room remember what it was like to kind of go back to that time where, we were all in quarantine and these horrific videos were just coming through on our social media feeds. And it was this sort of very isolating experience for me where I was just in my bedroom, alone, like doom scrolling, and just seeing these videos coming through one after the other, and you just feel like there was no escape from it, And so when Gina approached me to do this project, and I was like, this is sort of what we've all been feeling in this moment. So, we sort of, I sort of jumped on that. But in terms of, filming this, we were filming this during the Delta surge, yeah. And so, we really struggled with, people were, kind of, a lot of the community works were going on Zoom and not really in person. And a lot of the interviews we were doing, people didn't want us in their homes. So that was a big challenge for us in the filmmaking. But I think in the end, people really wanted to tell their stories, and people really wanted, to speak up about what they've been experiencing. So.
And I was really struck that you got the intimacy that you did with the man in particular, Robert Peterson, during a time where you're not supposed to let anyone in your space. And so really, hats off to you. I watched a screener of this before today's event, and Gina, I had told you, first of all, just hats off, because the job of journalists and documentarians is to document that and be at front lines of history, to make sure a moment is not forgotten. I'm going to butcher what Stacey Abrams said in your doc, but she said something about, you can't apologize for what you've done wrong if you don't know you did it wrong. And you're helping us to remember that something was done wrong in this chapter, so that when people think about it 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, they're going to say, oh, there was this pandemic, and there was this insane backlash that included mass murder and the targeting of elders and whatnot. So,
No, absolutely. I mean, that's why we made the film, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to say real quickly, I just want to say thank you to Monthanus for letting us, interview you for the
bravery and everything that you've done for this community. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, when as Titi said, when this was all happening, I mean, you know, violence against Asian Americans isn't anything new, and Charles said that very eloquently in the film. But we just knew that this time was unique. We knew it was different. I mean, in my lifetime, I've never experienced anything like this. And so it was important for us to document this moment, you know, for my son's generation, for the next generation, and also as journalists, you know, like as Asian American journalists, we knew that we wanted to be the ones to tell the story. Like, it's our story, and it was important for us to be the ones to tell it. And you know, Titi and I have been doing this for a long time, and we understand the power of journalism, we understand the power of film, and we know how many people it could reach. And so when we approached PBS, and Dawn is, you know, has been instrumental working with us since day one on this film, it's been a remarkable journey. I mean, we made this like in 6 months, so it's pretty.
Yeah, that's rapid, rapid. You know, something I told you, Gina, and I want to open it up really as a conversation point for this panel is, I don't know that I always feel Asian American. It's an identity, you know, we have multiple identities, right? You don't just hold on to one identity, reified all the time. Different things come to the back and forth in different moments. For example, the Me Too movement definitely made me think about my womanhood a lot more. And for the first time, talk to my girlfriends about sexual harassment. Watching your film, I felt Asian American. And it reminded me of the power of storytelling. And I wondered, were you setting out to do that, to sort of activate the thing in so many of us that is not activated? And this is a part of question to the documentary makers, but really it's a question to the whole panel, because all of you are engaged in this kind of work.
Well, it's a loaded, you know, I think, well, first of all, I also want to express my appreciation to the family. You know, I think you all have been so heroic. And, you know, when I think about, for Kim, I've been doing this work for like half my life. And I think so much in regards to the violence perpetrated against elders in our community, I think there was a certain kind of awakening that, you know, there's always been this contesting definition of Asian America, of whether it's political or whether it's, you know, only in America, or whether it's how many actually subscribe to it. But I think when we all saw elders and women being attacked, I think that really went beyond sort of an ethnic identity, and it became a very deeply felt, almost family experience of like, this is something for me. And I see, you know, even though I might not be of Thai experience or something, that it felt like our family was being attacked, right? So I don't exactly know. And then I think that became, you know, you see celebrities and politicians, and I think there's a certain kind of, perhaps deep kind of like experience of how, you know, of one's journey to this country that just got struck to its very core. So I think there's you know, there are different moments, but I think the moment of violence and being attacked and what you're going to do with it became, I think, central for an awakening. And I don't think it's so much necessary that it's a political kind of awakening, but rather a consciousness of, you know, what is this community and this perspective I'm going to defend and fight for, as opposed to what is this political awakening or how's it play out. So I think, you know, it's all been about defending those we care about.
I want to hear from Charles, and I have so many, my hard-hitting questions are really for you, but just one quick follow-up with Don. You know, I was thinking, in what you just said about consciousness, I had the pleasure several months ago, during the pandemic, of interviewing Barack Obama for my podcast, okay? He was the 7th guest on Art and Tower. That's Asian American flexing. And I'd asked President Obama what he had learned about power that his 19-year-old self did not know. And he had explained, he's like, well, you know, Aarti, and I was so proud to pronounce my name correctly. We're all correcting people, right, all the time. All good. He said, politics is about people and it's about money. That's what it is. And to mobilize people, it strikes me, Don, that your career is very much organized in that sense. And I guess I wanted to know, do you feel we've created sufficient stories to mobilize the people and the money that our community needs to be more powerful?
Well, you know, it's a complicated, I think what has happened for the Asian American community in the last 3 years is going to be the new foundation of what the ground that we all stand on. You hear an entity like Norman talking and TAAF being created, I think you see, I think so much of what happened after Atlanta was the Asian American journalists reporting on the moment. I think if you take Asian American journalists out of the coverage, you might not have that story properly being told. That's right? And I think, you know, from celebrities to teachers to what's happening in classroom, to you hear for the first time conversations happening between generations of Asian Americans that hadn't happened before, often youth-led. I think we're really at the very beginnings of how we see ourselves in a new kind of vocabulary that's exciting for storytellers, right? I think it's, you know, it's all only happened, you know, I think right before the pandemic was, you know, Minari and, you know, Crazy Rich Asians, and I think there's gonna be just, at TAAF there was a conversation about the Harlem Renaissance, and I think, you know, hopefully the offshoot of this is an Asian American Renaissance that we might not have been able to imagine had this moment not happened.
I feel like the operational advice for parents in the audience is please don't dissuade your children from going into storytelling.
Or maybe you should.
Exactly.
It's not easy. I just wanted to add that, you know, we did make this film for the Asian American community, but we really do hope that it reaches a broad audience. I mean, you know, people from all walks of life should watch this film, and we do, you know, someone said that empathy is created when we share our stories, or when our stories are shared, and I think that's crucial here, that, you know, if only Asian Americans watch this film, it's just not going to have the kind of impact that we need it to have. So that's
Absolutely. Charles, you have really rolled up your sleeves, and you've been throwing punches. You've been throwing a lot of punches. And I just want to hear a little bit from you about how you see an Asian American community building power. What's the pathway to being more relevant, having more strength?
Well, I don't know which punches you're talking about, but I'm happy to roll with that. You know, one thing that I was so proud of depicted in the Gina and Titi's film is the rise of the community, right? So I think our community is probably unique in the sense that, you know, we've been represented by voices that maybe haven't always been representative of our community. And so you saw Gina and Titi, you know, show clips of our Atlanta team, right? We had Sarah there and Victoria, and then you saw a picture of Preacher Jenny in St. Louis, and you know, our New York team filling Times Square, and pictures of our organizers here, like Justin and Myron and Max and Brian, filling the streets to mark these moments, to show the rest of America and ourselves that we actually matter. And you know, that to me is, even though they might just be rallies, you know, I remember Hudson talking about when we occupied Washington Square Park and then marched down Columbus Avenue after, you know, there was an attack of a senior at a senior facility. You know, where I walked to work every single day, and you know, elderly woman was brutalized, and then to walk down Columbus Avenue and then into the heart of Chinatown, and seeing, you know, kind of the faces of elderly Chinese looking at our signs written in Chinese, and they're confused at first, but holding fists along with us, because you could just see for the first time people actually, you know, people sense that, you know, we actually give a fuck about them. And it's about time. It's about time for people to give a fuck about our community. And so I thought I'd say something for a minute. So I don't know which country you're talking about, but those are the countries I'm proud that our community is with.
And, something I do wonder about, I moved to San Francisco in 2012. And I did not realize, I'm a native New Yorker from Queens. I grew up in Asia Central, so my identity was, I was sort of nurtured and loved in a multi-ethnic Asian community from the start of my life. I came to San Francisco, and I just did not realize how deep Asian American culture and history, economics, everything runs in the city. And it puzzled me because, we in mass media, we project the images of Silicon Valley bros and white Stanford programmers, and that becomes a very prominent part of the city's identity, but not the faces of who's in this room and the parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who built the city. And I was wondering, what's it gonna take for America and the world to recognize San Francisco as Asian Mecca? The way that, for example, people recognize Atlanta as Black Mecca. For anyone. I want to answer.
San Francisco is Asian. I'm not sure I care whether it is or not, but there's a gravity here where it's hard to kind of recognize this unless you're here. But those few blocks in Chinatown, those few blocks are a microcosm of America right now. Because right now, maybe for the first time visibly, San Francisco politicians actually care a tiny smidge about our community. What happens there moves the city, and what happens in San Francisco moves California, and what happens in California moves this country. So I was pleased as punch for the first time ever after, no matter what you think about him, it's an expression of power. After the school board recall and after the DA recall that was led by Asian Americans, no matter whether you agree with it or not, it was led by Asian Americans, and not right-wingers. We are not right-wingers, we're all Democrats here, right? And to suggest otherwise is fake and it's false. But for the first time, I see the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, devoting ad buys, millions of dollars to actually talk to and listen to our community in California. And so I think that's a great change. And I don't care whether people recognize that happening or not, it is happening.
And part of the punching you've done then, because you were asking me for an example of what I mean, is you've written about that, you've spoken about that, you've made sure that politicians get that feedback and go, hey, by the way, you saw this happen, right? We all saw this happen. John doesn't, right? Sort of uses it as an example. In the documentary, there was something that really struck me that I wanted to discuss. And it has to do with themes of shame. And I'm going to sort of close off with this live question, and then open it up to the audience for questions you may have, okay? But for example, in Atlanta, when the mass shooting first happened, there was some reluctance among Asian Americans to say, hey, why were we targeted? Because there were questions first, wait, spa workers? Are those sex workers? The spa was right next to a strip club. There was a question of, are these people good immigrants? Are they clean enough to be associated with us? Robert Peterson, whose mom was slave, he had said, this tragedy is the most embraced I've felt in the community. He's of mixed race, Black and Asian, and often feeling rejected. And so I guess I wanted to just ask about, maybe the documentarians want to talk a little bit about what you saw on the ground in terms of the shame people grapple with as they utter their voice. And just talking about that theme more broadly, because I think that a lot of us silence our Asian American identity because of that reflex.
I think one of the things that in Atlanta that as a result of this shooting was that Victoria, she's in the film, she started leading these listening tours around various communities in Atlanta with the Asian Americans. And she said that in her listening tours for the first time, elderly Asian Americans start talking about the kind of racism that they've experienced in their lifetime. And for a lot of them, it was the first time that any of them had talked about it and actually verbalized it. And I think there's a lot of, for Asian Americans, this model of like assimilation is that, we're taught to keep our head down, to almost not recognize the racism in this country in order to assimilate, in order to survive. And I think this tragedy, kind of going on what Dawn was saying earlier, is that I think it's a lot of Asian Americans are starting to talk about what, the kind of microaggressions, that they've been experiencing. I think this is particularly true of first generation Asian Americans. As second generation, we're more, well aware of the history and discrimination that we've, faced in this country. But for first generation, I think this is a very pivotal moment for them to kind of also express the experience that they've felt, in this country.
Yeah, and then just to piggyback on that, historically, for years it was complicated in Detroit after Vincent Chen was murdered, that he was in a strip club and that he was, doing, so I think in San Francisco there was a movement around Chol Soo Lee and getting him out of San Quentin. There's been a pattern of the narrative, the story that Asian Americans are supposed to abide to, but I think also importantly, what communities of color, what is a proper story for you to tell? And I think, perhaps there's going to be an unleashing, an opening up of a widening of the stories that we seek to tell, because I think that it's claiming a narrative that is much more about lived lives, real people, and be very honest about what's happening.
I could just piggyback on that for a moment. I just want to share a couple of things about this before that is so relevant. My first book is a memoir about my family's immigrant journey to America as working class South Asians. And my father was arrested, and I spent more than a decade of my life fighting for him to stay in this country, including running circles around ICE and successfully beating them to keep him here. Thank you. And the number one question I would get on book tour from South Asian Americans was, how is it okay to write about family problems? People were just stunned that I felt the liberty to put on the page what is a contemporary American memoir. And it struck me so much that we have so much shame when we are not perceived as perfect that we're literally erasing ourselves.
This is shame in a different manner. Like, do you think that everyone we interviewed in the film, everyone kept sharing the same story? Titi, everyone kept saying I've experienced people telling me that I don't belong here, that go back to your country. And I think that brings a lot of shame to Asian Americans. I don't know why that cuts so deep. I don't know why it hurts so much, but being that perpetual foreigner and not being part of the fabric of the country, when that's so not true, I do think there is shame in that, and people carried that for many years. And people don't talk about it as often as we should. And I think it's, Titi's right. The younger generation much more so than the older generation, but I think that's something that we have to change.
Can I just add one more thing about what Gina was saying about, everybody we talked to told us, that this idea of go back to your country. And I think to Dawn's earlier point about, I think that is a common experience, whether or not, it's a political experience, but that is an experience that we share as Asian Americans, and that is, I don't want to say that shame brings us together because it's more complicated than that, but but it is a shared experience that we understand,
No, I think you're right, because we're not a monolith. You're absolutely right. But these like the rise of anti-Asian hate these past couple of years, I think people are feeling a little bit more of this unity, right? I think before Asian Americans have been very nationalistic, like Korean, you know, you're Chinese, but I think with what's happened these past couple of years, I think we do see, sort of more, you know, coming together.
Even with the Browns.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, immigration.
Charles, did you want to say something as well? I was hoping you would. All right, let me see, are there questions in the audience?